Thank you. So welcome to the Digital Lab launch event. We're delighted to be able to spend the next hour with you and talk to you about the new research center that we've set up that began in March of this year called Digital Lab. It's funded through the EPSRC, through both the digital economy theme and manufacturing the future, and is supported by the University of Exeter Business School, Oxford Brookes Business School, and the University of East Anglia School of Computing. So we're going to talk to you today about some of the objectives that we have for the program. We're going to introduce some of the challenges we're facing as we try to look at the digital world and the kinds of research problems that we think we'll be trying to look at. And we'll also be trying to invite you to take part in the work that we're doing and give you some opportunities to get involved with this program as we move forwards. So what I'd like to do first is just introduce to you the objectives for the next hour. First, we're going to do a little welcome and give you a little context, but we're going to go straight into some perspectives on the future of digital transformation. And I'm delighted that we have two great guests for you today. Rashik Parmar, who's an IBM Fellow and VP of Technology for EMEA at IBM, and Esra Kasapoglu, who's the Executive Director for AI and Data Economy at Innovate UK. They'll be giving us a short perspective on some of the challenges we face and trying to inspire us to think about some of the ways that we can look at digital transformation in our role. We'll then look at the Digital Lab itself and give you a quick overview of what we're trying to achieve. And then we'll look at the research directions and focus specifically on some of the research challenges and look at how you can get involved in supporting this work. So firstly, very quick welcome to both the Digital Lab and the digital future. As we know, we're all facing tremendous opportunities, but also tremendous challenge as we look at the ways in which digital technologies are affecting and shaping the way we look at the world, the way we think about society, our day-to-day work lives and home lives. There are many different technologies that are affecting what we do now. And as many authors have written, people from all walks of life have described the kind of confluence we're facing right now of technological change, societal change, and as we know, regulation, all sorts of compliance issues, many kinds of issues that are coming together at once to drive us towards a new way of thinking about how we work in our digital future. So we're very interested in this challenge, and in particular, we're interested in what it means when we transform our behaviors, our ways of working, our operating procedures, our business models, our organizational structures, and how we can drive that change, particularly in some of the larger organizations that typically struggle to move in this very dynamic environment, to adopt new ways of working, to think about the world from new perspectives and drive that through their organization. So the Digital Lab was set up to address some of these concerns. We're going to talk in some detail in a moment about what that means and why we were set up and the way that we're organizing the work that we're doing to address those concerns. But before we do that, I'd like to try to introduce some perspective on this digital world and the challenges and opportunities that we have. And I've got two great guests for us to do that. The first I'm going to introduce is Rashik Parmar. Rashik is an IBM Fellow who's worked in IBM for a number of years in several roles. And in particular, recently he led the IBM Academy, which is the leading technologists across the IBM organization throughout the world. He's now the VP of Technology for Europe, the Middle East and Africa, and is working in many ways to drive the technology direction at IBM. So I'd like to introduce Rashik and ask Rashik to give a few comments about how he sees the opportunities and challenges and what he thinks about the future of digital transformation. Rashik, over to you.
Thanks, Alan, and delighted to share a few perspectives here. And as I think about the future of technology, there's a few things that come to mind for me. One is that we are in a world where digital platforms really are the place that gravitate towards the drive of innovation. Every CXO I talk to, they want to be the X of the industry. So they want to be the Facebook, the Airbnb or the Uber of their industry, and this kind of verb of becoming the digital platform is top of mind amongst all of the leaders. And so I think the challenge we have here is how do we articulate that as a meaningful journey, right? You can't just suddenly become a Facebook of your industry or whatever of your industry. You need to be true to yourself. You need to be true to your customers, true to your environment. And quite often there are some really difficult challenges like business models. How do we cope with some of the business model, the expectation and behaviors of our customers? How do we actually understand what they care about and how we align with their needs and wants? So actually last year, and through the pandemic, I've been trying to meet with CTOs and really understand from the CTOs what's top of mind for them. And you'll see that last February, early this year, we interviewed 100 CTOs and got their insights, and it was consistent. They had 3 big challenges they wanted to try and address. One is survival. How do we use digital technologies to basically survive? Cope with the pandemic, cope with the financial uncertainty they have, cope with all the challenges they face. That's the first challenge. The second thing they said was, look, we need to be able to simplify. The world has become increasingly complex, and we just pile more and more technology on that. So one of the quick questions we need to have is, how do we actually simplify this to a point where, simple things like, whether I want to travel from A to B, and we were talking earlier about the complex decision process that we got now just to be able to travel from A to B. How do we simplify that and recognize that there are a balance in risks and opportunities that we've got to take? So simplification. The third space is some of the CTOs were saying, look, we think we've got something unique, and that uniqueness is something that we want to be able to scale around the world. So how do I super scale my unique capability and really have that bigger impact? And so that scaling is kind of key to it. So the 3 S's I say, it's about survival, simplification, and super scale. And depending on where you are in that space, you've got to try and decide what the right strategy is. At the same time, we saw some interesting anecdotes that came through that. So through the interviews, as I read through all the interviews, we started to see some anxieties, and I call it anxieties because people struggle to put words to it. That's what we've tried to do with this work, and you'll see behind me there's a banner which is called Responsible Computing, and that really summarizes it. The anxieties were things like, look, we've seen people really mess up badly in using data in an inappropriate way. The story of Target in the past, we all know about that, right? we know about Facebook Beacon. We see all kinds of challenges coming forward, like internet's dirty secrets. Some of it is true, some of it's not true. How are we doing the right things, and how we're being responsible in using these digital technologies to create the world we want to be part of? And so they were asking questions like, how much should I be doing around sustainability in my IT? How much should I do to make sure I'm making ethical use of data? How much should I do to make sure I remove bias from my systems? How do I make sure that my systems are explainable and we don't get into that situation we had last year with the algorithms around student grades, right? And so they're asking guidance from us in providing clarity of what it means to be responsible. So responsible use of the data centers, responsible infrastructure and actually recycling it and understanding the environmental impact of that, being responsible in the code, being responsible in the use of data, responsible in the systems that we build, and ultimately creating responsible impact. So the thought I leave you with is, just because we can invent a knife doesn't mean we can steward its appropriate use. That knife can be used to cut fruits, it can be used to kill people, right? The choice is the individuals, but how do we provide enough guardrails that individuals will use this digital technology to create a world we want to be part of, rather than a world that we don't want to be part of? And I think that's the challenge that I think we all face. The opportunity is vast. We can all create the world, and we can imagine worlds that would be fantastic for us. But how do we create the world that we all want to be part of? And I think that's the challenge we face here.
Thank you, Rashik. I think that's really helpful and a very kind of motivating introduction for us to get started. That survive, simplify, and scale, I think is a really interesting trio that we see across many organizations, particularly larger established organizations, as we call them, LEOs, large established organizations, who are looking for ways that they can do those three things. The challenge, of course, is they're trying to do all of those three things at the same time. Is that something you're seeing? Is that the balance between those is particularly critical?
Absolutely, but what you find is, some industries are went through significant challenges. Survival really becomes a fore. You look at the transport industries, the airlines were really struggling. So they just said, don't tell us about anything else, I want to survive. Some industries were thriving. Some of the IT industries, as we went through remote working, they were thriving and they were all on scale. They weren't worried about survival. They weren't worried too much about simplification. They had the eye on growth. So I think you ought to look at the market context and understand where the reality is. Most of the companies, as you say, are in a balance. Most of the LEOs, as you say, are trying to do some things, part of the business, which is commoditizing, they've got to survive. Part of the business is becoming too complex, and that's not allowing to respond to the market pressures and market needs. And some parts of it, they do have some unique capabilities. What I think they all struggle with is effective experimentation. Right? They all talk experimentation, but when it comes to doing experimentation in a meaningful way, they struggle with that. And I think that's something that we can absolutely help them with from a digital perspective. Great.
Thank you so much, Rashik. That's really helpful. A great way to kick us off. I'd like to move us across now to Esra Kasapoglu. Esra is an executive director at Innovate UK, particularly aimed at AI and the data economy, and has a background working both in Microsoft in digital strategy and in a number of other of the big four consulting companies with Infosys and with Accenture. So a really great perspective to offer on this. So Esra, please, let's have your perspectives on the future of the digital transformation.
Well, thanks, Alan, and thank you for having me today. And I think I could resonate, it resonates well with me what Rashik was talking about: responsible innovation, effective experimentation in a meaningful way. I mean, we have great opportunities, but we also have a long way to go. And today, I mean, I would like to bring a bit about, a different perspective, and I would like to talk about digital technologies, digital revolution, what it means to be a human in this age of disruption, and the relationship between business and research. I think everybody will agree, and you guys, I'm sure, would agree with me 100%. Digital technologies are widely accepted as having the potential to transform virtually every industry and create significant economic value in our lives. And a recent survey finds that actually COVID-19 sped up the digital transformation and technologies by several years. I mean, digital economy enabled by digital technologies has emerged and become an integral part of the economy, but also is creating a new socio-economic system that replaces the previous industrial paradigms that we know of. How? I mean, by creating a new economic model that works in a circular manner as feedback loop in which data and interactions are the main resource and source of value. Data, data, data. Indeed, in the digital economy, what is prevailing is an omni-channel approach. As the world is digitally transitioning, production processes, supply chains, and transactions may be taking place at different combination of possibilities between the physical and the digital world. The transactions may be just physical, or maybe digital, or maybe both. It depends on our interactions and what we are buying, what we are selling. But today we could safely say that technologies have changed our lives. They change how we interact with information, how we engage, and how we behave as an individual, as a community. I think digital transformation involves a fundamental rethinking. Digital transformation involves a fundamental rethinking of how an organization works, the role of government, the role of the actors, and how they interact with the environment. The main driver of this change is the modern consumer, us, a human or collection of humans who consume the service or the product. And in my opinion, digital transformation is not going to be so much about the technology itself, but it's going to be about humanity and human condition. We will also be getting more serious about identity, security, privacy, and further spread of misinformation. In fact, the 2021 Technology and Innovation Report by United Nations urges all developing nations to prepare for a period of deep and rapid technological change that will profoundly affect markets and societies. At the same time, the high levels of concentration of resources, skills, and capacities needed to leverage digital transformations are going to heighten the risk that further digitalization and data-driven development will lead to widening digital divides and, unfortunately, the income inequalities, instead of contributing towards more inclusive and sustainable development. Digital technologies are not deterministic, unfortunately. They can create both opportunities and challenges. We can harness their potential for the common good, and we have an obligation to do so. They hold the promise of the future, from climate action and better health to more democratic and inclusive societies. I think we will have to think long-term and invest in everyone's future versus doing what we can for our narrowly defined selves here. The government will also have an important role to play to enhance social protection and ease workforce transitions, to deal with the potential negative consequences of digital technologies and growing reliance on digital data. This requires strengthening and aligning science, technology, and innovation systems and industrial policies, building digital skills and the workforce, spreading benefits more equitably to combat rising inequalities, and developing technologically aware citizens to close the digital divides. I think we are in a very prime position here, and UK, like all other countries, will need to pursue science, technology, and innovation strategies appropriate to UK's economic and social and environmental conditions. Obviously, we need to have this in close dialogue and collaboration with other stakeholders so that we can shape the digital economy, the future. This in turn will require a reasonable sense of the kind of digital future that is desirable, with ethical and inclusive use of technologies at its core. I think to model technology innovation and serve as an innovation engine, research and development strategy also needs to be equipped for today's fast-moving world. Investing in R&D could give significant competitive advantage at the business, industry, or national level, and provide the amount of innovation that UK economy needs to maximize its growth. I think that the answer to boosting economic growth, though, isn't just about R&D investment, it's about building a robust innovation capacity. It's about focusing on discovery by sharpening and growing our capabilities to incubate and deploy finished goods and services in the market. I think I'll refer to Rashik's 3 S's. This is the scale that we would like to achieve here. And research shows that investment in truly breakthrough innovation does pay off if it encompasses more than R&D and includes robust discovery, incubation, and acceleration capabilities. So the role of R&D, the role of thinking, exploration, analysis, discovery, and creativity is going to help cultivate new insights, which will help us navigate this complex world. Without it, we would be forced to rely solely on intuition and luck, which we don't really want to do. When considering the probability of achieving deliberate and systematic technology-based innovations, we are going to need to consider the path of knowledge translation from research and development to products or services in a market, and to generation of the desired socioeconomic impacts. Innovation requires thinking bigger, and some fundamental changes will be required to be made to how we approach things in order to help scale innovations rapidly. That also means that synergies between push and pull mechanisms, incentive models for the technology development will need to be explored. I think we are on the cusp of a revolutionary paradigm shift here, in which the rate of adoption is slower because of the pace at which these technologies are accelerating. Looking back to the past, as with so many technological breakthroughs, progress in technology has moved faster than society. It is happening again now, whether we like it or not. This is not a matter of ifs or whens, it is already happening. We need to really gear ourselves up for this. And I think the goal of scientists, how I see, is to better understand the world around them so that they can solve the world's most complex problems or overcome the world's biggest challenges and dramatically improve the lives of human beings. I think with that level of consciousness, the scientific research community have never been this much connected or empowered. I think you guys are in such a prime position to solve the world's most complex problems or overcome the world's biggest challenges. I also see that there is a great opportunity here to support the policymakers and regulators alike in developing well-designed policies at national and international levels aimed at value creation and capture so that we can together better build an inclusive digital economy. We, within Innovate UK, focus on driving productivity, economic growth by supporting businesses to develop and realize the potential of new ideas, including those from the UK's world-class research base. We connect businesses to partners, customers, and investors that can help them turn these ideas into commercially successful products and services, and obviously business growth. And I think for us, there is no better place to be with so many challenges to overcome and so many opportunities to unlock. Only robust collaboration between Innovate UK and R&D community and all other ecosystem players, large organizations, small SMEs, scales ups, we can ensure that we can maximize the benefits of digital technologies and help distribute them equitably across the society. And I would like to leave you with one thought today, if I could. And this is, have we been able to embrace a culture that enables coexistence between execution for today and creative experimentation for tomorrow that is likely needed to achieve this paradigm shift? That's me for today. Thank you very much for having me, and thanks very much for listening.
Esra, that's tremendous, and I think a real kind of gauntlet thrown down, I think, for us to face some of these challenges. But what you described here is really a digital revolution, and you've described some of the elements of that. Is that how you see it? But we're very much in the middle of a revolution.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Rashik's points as well, survive, simplify, and scale. That is the byproduct. But we have been evolving. Digital technologies have moved on. We are seeing new problems. We are seeing new opportunities. And society is also changing the way that they approach things. Absolutely. This is the fourth industrial revolution, fifth maybe, and the revolutions between, the time span between the revolutions is shrinking. And obviously with this, with the need to survive these, absolutely, I see this is a kind of a revolutionary, it's a point in a revolution for us. And, we are in a cusp of a change. The next 10 years will look so different than the past 10 years. I don't even know what it will look like, but the future is as good as we make it out to be.
Great, thank you so much, and that's an inspiring way for us to start off this session and talk a little more about what we're doing in the Digital Lab. So thank you so much, Esra, and thank you again, Rashik. So let me go back to sharing my slides and give you a few more details on where we're going in the Digital Lab and lead into some of the research challenges that we're addressing in our work. So the Digital Lab itself is a next stage digital economy research center, part of the EPSRC's program for looking at the future of the digital economy based on the research that they've been carrying out and supporting over the last 10 years. So building on that knowledge and experience, the Digital Lab was set up to look at one specific aspect of this, which is how large established organizations, what we call LEOs, can reimagine themselves for this digital age. So going beyond some of the perhaps near-term steps of digitizing, trying to use digital technologies to redefine what we do today in a way that uses digital technologies, to reimagine how those digital technologies change the fundamental base of those organizations, the customers and stakeholders they serve, and society around us. So that means we go from digitizing to transforming through the use of digital technologies, which addresses a number of other aspects beyond the digitization: new business models, new ways of working and organizing, new ways of thinking about the society that we address. So how are we looking at that? Well, for us, when we look at large established organizations, we feel there are three aspects of this to do with these three words: large, established, and their organizational structures. So first of all, as was mentioned earlier on, because they're large, we deal with scale. So we see many organizations where in small scale situations, parts of those organizations have seen rapid shift. They've moved quickly. They've learned how to experiment. They have very well-defined integrated teams working at a super pace in order to deliver value. The challenge for them often is how that scales across the organization and how the broader structures of the organization help to support and accelerate that change. The second aspect is about they're established, which means that they have heritage, opportunities, and challenges. They've got clients and partners. They have an existing workforce. They have a skills base. They have the objectives around them that they're trying to support, including their responsibility to their local authorities, to governments, to agencies, to the regulations around them. So they've got lots of issues that they have to deal with so that when they move forward, they move so in a well-defined and disciplined way. And finally, their organizations. They have structures, they have decision-making processes, they have responsibilities to auditors, to compliance, to all sorts of areas, which means that there's tension in the organization between the need to conform and the need to experiment, to try things in a new way and to move forwards. So we're very interested in these tensions, perhaps even these paradoxes that we face inside these organizations as they try to expand and grow. So for us, looking at those large-scale issues is particularly important. In order to do that, the Digital Lab is focused in 5 areas, 4 key areas plus a sort of integrating view of these. The first is around the technology itself. Yes, the technologies are interesting of themselves and in themselves, but we're very much interested in the maturity of those technologies. How we go from an early experiment that says this looks like an interesting technology that would change the way we work, through to the deployment of that technology, perhaps a first of a kind project, a technology that we're going through a pilot, or we're doing some sort of proof of concept, through to we're now trying to understand how we move that into our organization at scale across a variety of contexts within which they can deploy and use that technology successfully. And of course, there are many opportunities for us to build on the work of the Digital Catapult and the other catapults, the work of Innovate UK, the work of some larger organizations that are enabling that kind of change. The second is in the area of business models. A lot of activity over the last few years looking at digital business models, in particular, what we might call servitization, how organizations are looking from selling products to selling services, from moving from value in exchange to value in use, how we look at those models and how we look at the outcomes of the use of those models. So there's a big focus in that area as we look at new business models, and particularly things like platform business models. The third is the organizational structures themselves. As we know, the organizational systems that support and govern our organizations are changing rapidly to help us to deal with the agility that we need, the experimental point of view, design thinking, other sorts of techniques that allow us to move quickly, but not to do so in a chaotic way, to do so in a disciplined way, and to understand what those new forms of discipline look like. So our organizational structures are critical. And the fourth is about individual well-being. If we've learned nothing from the last couple of years in this very difficult time in the pandemic age, we've learned that the individual well-being of our employees, of our stakeholders, of our clients, of our families is incredibly important in how we move forward in the use of digital technologies, and how those digital technologies can both support us and cause challenge when we feel that some of the key parts of how we live and work are being revolutionized in the way we just described. The very separation between work and home life, how we think about ourselves in a digital world, what these digital technologies do to our sense of self, our sense of being an individual, our sense of agency over our actions. So individual well-being has had a huge effect on how we think about the future. So that's particularly important to us, particularly things like techno stress, people stressed by the use of technologies, by the influence of technologies. And then the final piece of our work is about, can we bring some of these together? Looking at each of these individually is important, but collectively, the challenge large established organizations face is not solving individual problems, it's the collective problem of moving forward in the way that was described, for example, by Rashik, in looking at how they balance survivability, scalability, and then also sustainability. So we're very interested in these areas, how organizations think and how they focus. So those are the areas for us. That's where we're looking at some of the key work we'll be doing. The academic partners we have involved, the University of Exeter, East Anglia, and Oxford Brookes, bring together an incredible set of minds, an incredible set of experiences from the academic world, leading some of the insights that we're trying to gain in these areas. At Exeter, led by myself as the director of the lab, Saeema, Ahmed-Kristensen, and Roger Maull supporting the delivery of the key insights from the Exeter side, Professor Gerard Parr from the School of Computing at East Anglia, and in Oxford Brookes, Tim Vorley, who's the Dean of the Business School. So we're really excited to bring a very powerful set of ideas, a very powerful set of minds to this problem. We're also very focused on bridging that gap that was mentioned by Esra between academia and industry. And we've got an incredible set of industry partners supporting this program. We've got three kind of categories of partner. The end user industry partners are from a number of really key domains. These are organizations that have significant impact on the future employability in the UK, the way we look at ourselves, the services we deliver, the kind of society we wish to have as people driving into a digital world. This includes organizations like Syngenta and AB Agri in the food supply chain, Zoetis, a pharmaceutical organization, the largest in the world, looking at the animal supply chain, Centrica in the energy area, organizations like Arup in building supplies, aggregate industries in transportation and roads. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but you can see for yourself in the industry sector, we've got some really significant organizations looking at these challenges as they move forwards. The infrastructure behind those, of course, is critical. We'll be driven by core infrastructure technologies at the heart of our digital transformation. This includes organizations like BT and its 5G investments, Amazon Web Services, SAP, and VMware, who are very important in the infrastructural change, particularly around data, particularly around cloud-based services, particularly around back office solutions that are at the core of many of the large-scale challenges that we face in organizations. And DataSwift, specifically looking at some new data models of how we prioritize the value of data, how we try to provide some economic value around data, and why the collection and sharing of data is so critical to our future. And then supporting those, particularly for scalability, it's essential that we have impact partners that can gain access and deliver value in a scalable way across organizations, can deliver educational experiences, can deliver insights through experiments, can start to leverage the insights from the academic partners into the world of industry. Headspring as a major executive development organization, Foundry 4 experimenting in the delivery of technologies through particularly into the public sector, but also into the commercial sector. The Digital Leaders Forum, a large forum of digital leaders and executives sharing information and understanding how the digital future evolves. Scrum.org, the largest organization teaching agile practices, both at the software level and across all organizations. And of course, the Digital Catapult itself, showcasing digital technologies, connecting small-scale, large-scale organizations and the academic world. So a tremendous opportunity for us to work with these partners and deliver value. So having described some of the key elements and the main ways in which we're looking at the delivery of value, it's really important we start to think about the Digital Lab and its unique opportunities for driving new research insights. As a national center, it gives us the opportunity to think about what we can do in a new way, but it also allows us to look at this from the point of view of some unique characteristics. The interplay between academia and business is particularly important for us. How we take that knowledge and not just build an initial prototype, an initial experiment, a first of a kind project, but how we think about the transition of those insights across an organization to drive sustainable change. So we're looking at that with these partners, with our communities, and we're looking forward to getting your input to that as research contributors. So I'd like to move forward and take a look at some of those research challenges and what we think some of the key starting points will be for our investigations. And in order to do that, I'd like to pass to Roger Maull and Saeema Ahmed-Kristensen and get them to give some views about how they see the research directions and what that will mean for the future of the Digital Lab. Over to you, Roger.
Thank you, Alan. I'm going to say next when I want you to move the slides forward. So good morning, everybody. There's lots of people on this call that I know, and it's good to see some old friends. So what about the research direction for Digital Lab? As Alan said, we are a national centre. So one of the 6 national digital economy centres, specifically focusing on LEO. So that's our unique profile. We are cross-sectoral. If people are thinking, are you just manufacturing or are you just services? No, we're cross-sectoral. We're feeding into things like manufacturing made smarter or next generation services, both Innovate UK sort of programs. So we're interested in wherever we find digital transformation in large organizations. We want to make an invite to people. We want to welcome people to join us. If this is a national centre, and it is a national centre, we want to say, okay, if you're interested in digital transformation research, come and talk to us, come and engage with us, come and be part of this story. Because in that way, we can expand your impact and we can expand their impact, and we can impact organizations and we can impact policymaking. Lots of opportunities here to make a big difference. And our focus, particularly our focus, is on how digital technologies are affecting technology adoption. For example, how mature is the technology? How is it scaled? As Alan mentioned, we're interested in business models. We're interested in new products and services. We're interested in outcome-based models. We're interested in organizational structures. How is digital transformation changing the processes of an organization? How its decision-making takes place? What its leadership structures are like? How leadership is enacted in a digital world? And we're interested in the working environment, all things like workplace stress. How do we do job design in a digital world? How do we assess people's performance? Next. Alan, next. So where will we, you may be thinking, okay, that's a really big, broad picture. Have you got some, are we focusing on some big, interesting research challenges that you may also be interested in? So you might also be trying to think, what does DIGIT stand for? It stands for digital innovation, growth, impact, and transformation. So these, I feel like these are 4 big research areas that we're interested in. Firstly, and the most obvious one, how do LEOs make best use of the emerging digital technologies? If it's 5G, if it's Internet of Things, if it's blockchain, whatever it is, whatever digital technology you're talking about, how do LEOs make best use of that? So that's obviously right at the center of what we're interested in. We're also interested in how LEOs can use digital technologies to achieve clean growth. There's been a big move, if you like, from a focus on productivity to trying to understand the balance between productivity, perhaps, and clean growth, and what we're talking about is understanding the impact on the environment and the broader environment. So we're interested in how the digital technologies can help that transformation in how society operates. Digital impact, how we can enhance employee well-being. Alan's talked a lot about that. And digital, all of those three really come together in this final question, which is around digital transformation. How do organizations, we want to impact how organizations manage their individuals, their teams, how they manage their organizational structures to achieve and speed up digital transformation. Next slide. So what's our research design? Our unit of analysis essentially is the organization. We're interested in the organization, be it the firm in manufacturing or a service firm. We do have opportunities to work in the wider value chain. So with some of the organizations that we're working with, we have the opportunity to say, actually, the unit of analysis isn't just the organization, she's actually their suppliers and their customers. In other words, we can draw a bigger boundary around that and look at how digital transformation is impacting that whole value chain. We recognize we're theory building. We're going to need to tease out contextual variables. So in what contexts are these forms of digital transformation working? Is it sectoral? Is it particular size? Is it the dynamism? Is it the clock speed, as some might say? We're theory building. And critically, what we start out with is very much supporting what Esra said earlier. What is different about digital transformation? For us, it's not just transformation. You can't just take away the word digital. For us, it's a more fundamental change. It's a change in how business is done, how organizations operate, how society works. So it's a very big revolutionary change. We're not focusing on the rails of the technology. We're not, if people say digital economy or digital transformations about, I don't know, a new website or speeding up the efficiency of how I collect data, that's part of it, but that's not what we're really focused about. We're interested in what is new and what is different, what's emerging as new and new opportunities, new business models. We're interested in the discontinuities, if you like. Now, this idea of morphogenic change, a big change in the way in which society or organizations operate. And we're going to produce some case studies, some longitudinal studies. We're going to have some shared data sets. The companies we've been talking to are keen to share their ideas. And all of that is for the purpose of fostering these deeper and these bigger, more sustainable business and academic alliances. Next, Alan. So if you're a computer scientist, our interest, come and join us. If you're interested in how technologies impact organizations, if that's what you research, yep, we're definitely in that space, particularly around specific technology challenges like Internet of Things, perhaps. If you're a design researcher, we're interested in the processes of adoption. We're interested in all the things around creativity and innovation, because that's what we're seeing in these LEOs. They're struggling with how to harness that creativity to create that creativity. If you're an economist or a business scholar, we're interested in business models and how transformation impacts organizations. If you're a social scientist, we're interested in behavioral science questions about how organizations adopt these technologies and how consumers respond to them. If you're an ethicist, we're interested in the whole issues around responsible innovation and sustainable practices. If you're an engineer, we're interested in designing products and services, because the companies we're working with are doing new. They're doing new products and new services delivered in different ways. So if you're interested in those questions, come and talk to us. Next. So how can you actually specifically get involved? You could join us as a Digital Lab associate. If you are interested in those questions that I've been talking about the last 2 or 3 minutes, contact either Saeema or myself, because we're keen to get you on board. We're keen to include you within what we're trying to do here, within the scope of what we're trying to do. And we have these things we call digital fellows, where we're having people come to us and actually being a digital fellow as part of Digit. What that means is that you come and actively join in the research group, come and actively join in developing the research questions, come and actively join in as we talk and work with our companies. We also have industry fellowships for those industry people. So those industry people on the call who are keen to direct what we're doing here, we would also want to talk to you. There's an opportunity here to get engaged. You might want to deliver a Digit Lab seminar. We're just starting those things up. We're keen to have people every week, every 2 weeks, come and do a seminar on their research. You want to do that? We want to make an offer here. Come and share time with us. We have London offices. As you see behind me is a picture of Battersea Power Station. We're actually based in Southwark, in South Bank. In Southwark, we have London offices. If you find yourself in London, we'll be keen to sort of say hello to you. You want to come and say hello to us. If you want to spend a longer period of time with us, come and talk to us. We're happy to have people come and sit with us and engage with us and get actively involved. You might want to help co-organize and deliver an event. We've got lots of funding for doing events. So come and talk to us about if you've got a particular idea or technology or something in digital transformation, we'd be keen to talk to you about that. And finally, if whatever you choose to do, come and sign up for our newsletter and articles via the website. So there's opportunities here for everybody to get engaged. We think it's a revolution. We see ourselves as a national centre, and we do genuinely want to be open to people. Okay, Alan, that's me finished.
Great, thank you, Roger. So at this point, we'd like to start to throw this open and answer some questions that we've seen coming through on the chat. So we want to finish this by saying we're a relatively new group. We started just as the summer was starting in a very difficult time in lockdown and with the pandemic and so on. So we're facing a challenge of that we're all facing, which is getting moving, trying to get focused, trying to work out how we work together. We've got some very strong ideas of how we intend to do that, working in these cross-section kind of approaches, working between industry and academia, focusing on these research challenges and offering this open door. If you have ideas, if you have ways of working, if you have the opportunity to get involved with us in some way, we'd love to get you in one of the teams, include you in part of our conversation, and maybe even get involved in some on the ground work we're doing in companies and in organizations. For example, a group of us are heading out next week to spend a couple of days in some detailed conversations on the island of Jersey as they're looking at the digitization strategy on the island of Jersey, and Digital Jersey is one of our partners, is to open the door to us to say, come and see the conversations we're having between the infrastructure people, the people responsible for Jersey Telecom and the utilities and so on, the government folks, the business leaders, the Digital Jersey group itself, to look at how they're going to drive change in that interesting test bed, that interesting sandpit of a smaller location that is both its own state in the sense of its own country, and yet it's also something that's part of the UK and related to what we're doing in the UK. So there's very interesting dynamics going on in that environment, particularly in areas like hospitality and tourism, fintech, the agricultural areas. So it's a very interesting opportunity for us to look at a test bed and try to learn from what's happening there. So they're the sorts of things we're doing on the ground. And then also we've got these academically led activities through the lenses that Roger described in his presentation. We'd love to get you involved in that, and we'd love to hear what your interesting ideas are and how you can get involved with us to drive this forward. So let me end there. Anybody else from the group have any final comments before we draw this to a close and look at some of the questions that we have?
Alan, if I can just say, it's really exciting to see the innovations. I think this is much needed, and I think the guidance that you provide and the learnings will certainly help not just individual institutions, but also nations like the UK as they start to think about what it means for them at a UK level. So I think the guidance for government is also really important coming out of this.
Absolutely true. And we're already being asked, both through the EPSRC and some of our other partners, to take part in some conversations going on right now about the future of our state, the future of the UK government, the conversations that are happening about future policy. We're going to see a lot of challenge right now over this. I think Esra described the speed of these things is not in tune right now between the technological change, societal change, and between the regulations and the government changes that they're going to need to see. And I think one of the things that we'll spend a lot of time thinking about is how those things align. Just as an example, on our board, we have Yvonne Gallagher, who's head of digital for the National Audit Office. And that's a particularly important role right now because government auditing is causing a lot of opportunity and challenge. as organizations look to the future. And roles like auditing, policy management, governance, and regulation will have a huge impact on how large established organizations will move forward and the speed at which they can affect the changes that they're trying to enact. I see one or two comments in the chat about looking at how we balance what organizations have to do today and what they have to do in the future, which I think is a particular challenge. Roger, did you want to talk to that?
Yeah, I think we've got this ambidextrous thing, haven't we, that we talk about a lot here. You just have to keep the organization running, and at the same time change it. I think I don't know what everybody else's view on here is, but I think that's probably the comment we hear the most. How do we do both? Lots of different approaches to that, setting up separate little organizations, a separate bit of organization of the Leo, to including it within the Leo, like Barclays did for a long while. There are 4 or 5 different approaches. I'm not sure that we know what works best in what circumstance right now. That's my context piece.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we don't know. And I think that's another interesting challenge for us right now, is to think about what those different models are like. If we go right the way back to the most famous innovation theory of the last 30 years, which is Clay-Christensen's Innovator's Dilemma, it was very much aimed at that same problem.
Absolutely. One of the, sorry, Saeema, after you.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to add to that, because I think one of the things that we're looking at, which is different from Clayton's theory, is the adoption of the digital technologies and looking at that triangle. I think that's been mentioned by all the speakers, by productivity, responsibility, particularly with a sustainability perspective, and impact on well-being, which may be the employer or the end user. And I think that what is going to distinguish us from previous innovation theories.
Yep.
There's a couple of comments from Christine Ashton, who's also a great supporter of the Digit Lab work, about how we see a sort of Digit 100 equivalent for CTOs and CIOs of LEOs. And I think there's a lot of focus, I think, on smaller, either small scale SME or scale up companies. And I think it would be interesting to have something similar for larger organizations to recognize those CIOs, CTOs that are making a difference at this digital transformation level, and to support some of the work they're doing, and to propagate some of the things they're learning. And I think that's certainly one of the things we would like to try to get involved in. I think groups like Digital Leaders and CIONet and some of those other groups that we're involved with would be great channels for that. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to do that. Okay, anybody have any final comments before we wrap up?
I would like to just give one final comment, if I may. Thanks, actually. I think with this digital transformation, we are also seeing radical transparency. With radical transparency, there's a lot of responsibility on every single one of us. The established hierarchies are not going to be enabling what we would like to achieve and what we have as an opportunity. I think we need to also think about how we organize ourselves. Each individually, we are a leader in what we can do, what problem we can tackle, what solution we can provide, and how we can solve all these problems. And I think the more we do this, our consciousness and awareness level will increase, and that will also be a kind of a enabler for more empowerment in the society. And I think everybody, we talk about IoTs, we talk about AIs, we talk about machine learning, quantum, and I think people get nervous and anxious about, because they don't know what they are. And that's okay, because it's okay to be human, it's okay. But if we could work together to really help people see the solutions we can build with these technologies and make those lives better, and they can in the process, see how they can be part of this, I think we'll be able to achieve more.
I'm very much with you, and I think that's a key part of what we might call this inclusiveness or responsibility that we have as part of this digital transformation activity. I'm very much with you there, Esra. Thank you so much for that comment. Rashik, any final comment from you?
I think we've covered it really well, and the opportunity is vast, right? As you think about the change from post-COVID work, you think about what we've got to do from a sustainability perspective, and you think about the potential that digitization gives you. In the middle of that is the kind of nexus of evolution and survival that we need to work through. And any guidance that Digit can provide will help individuals plot their own path, and everybody's going to have to find their own path. There's not going to be one path. It's all going to be unique. And it's the guidance and practical steps that will make a difference.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you once again to Rashik and to Esra for their inspiring kind of talks at the beginning that set us off in the right direction. And thank you to Roger and Saeema for giving us some views on some of the work that's being done and the directions and the open invitation to everybody to get involved. And I'd just like to remind you that you can go to digit.ac.uk, find out more about what we're doing, get involved, get in touch, and we'd love to see you on more of our calls. And hopefully we'll be working together in the future. So thank you to everybody and hope to see you again soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.